Christmas Couples Retreat is a pretty good film. It's not perfect. There are a few things that I didn't love, and I'll talk about those in a moment with a spoiler warning towards the end. But in general, I thought it was quite good. This was released in 2023. It's directed by Salvatore Zannino and written by Zannino, F.D. Lewis, and Jimmy Clabots. And we have quite a large cast, actually, because we have several couples who are going to this retreat. The retreat is being led by an author, and it's basically about reconnecting as couples, and all with a Christmas theme and a Christmas backdrop. And there are several positives about this. I think the couples themselves were quite interesting. They were all ever so slightly different to each other, which obviously was a really good approach. The location is beautiful. The place they stay is gorgeous. We have a lot of Christmas activities, gorgeous decorations. Definitely a good film if you're looking for something to put you in the mood for the festive season. So that worked as well. And in general, I thought the narrative was very well written, very well executed. We obviously get a lot of different problems that the couples face, and they have an opportunity to talk about these things. And I think there are some really good takeaways. So if anybody is in a relationship and they can relate to any aspect of this, not just a romantic relationship, and I'll talk about that in a moment, I think there are some really strong positives that could actually genuinely help people in their existing or maybe even future relationships. So it does tick all of the right boxes. There's one thing that I absolutely loved, actually. It was kind of almost self-aware. But there was one thing that I didn't really care for. And I also have to say, the person leading this retreat, I didn't like her. From the very beginning, I didn't like her. She's called Dr. Fiona Gerard, and I couldn't get on board with the character. Really did not like her. I found her to be really irritating. And the other thing that I didn't like, because I feel like they tried too hard, is that there's something with that character. That character brings her own story, and I don't want to say too much about it, but we learn something that I guess is meant to be kind of suspenseful and mysterious and dramatic. It unfolds quite quickly, so I guess it's not that suspenseful. But anyway, the part of the story that really focuses on her towards the end of the film, I just felt was really unnecessary. And I feel like they tried to make it meaningful by injecting something that could be a little bit more emotional and a little bit deeper. But honestly, I feel like it detracted from the main narrative, and it felt forced, it felt unrealistic. And I don't want to say it ruined the film, because it absolutely didn't. But I feel like I would have loved this so much more if they hadn't tried too hard and then just completely missed the mark. Because sometimes something doesn't need to have an additional layer, and that additional layer can actually take away from the joy or the messages or the whatever vibe we're getting from the rest of the film. So I think that was a bad decision. So I don't like the character's personality, and I don't like the story surrounding her. Basically, I would have loved this if she wasn't in it, but I mean, it still could have worked as well. Couples going away together and reconnecting, but I don't think she was a good character, and I don't think she brought anything valuable to the narrative. That aside, I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and there's one bit that I loved. It's such a tiny thing, but it really made me laugh. The other thing I will say, though, is that one of the couples has a son, and I think he was too old. Nothing against the casting, but he just seemed a little bit too old. I think he needed to be ever so slightly younger. Maybe that's a personal preference thing. I just think he seemed too much like a fully grown adult who should be out living his own life, not following his parents around. So, not that somebody can't spend Christmas with their parents, but that's kind of the impression I was getting. So that didn't work for me. But what I did love, and this is a spoiler for something that happens, is that the son, they leave him to stay with his grandmother while they go off for a Christmas vacation, which in itself, again, they're kind of saying, well, you're a fully grown adult now, go off and do your own thing or stay with your grandmother while we, your parents, go and spend Christmas with some other couples, which again suggests that he's a fully grown son who doesn't need to spend Christmas with his parents. But the behaviour, it just seemed like a much younger person. So I didn't love it. But anyway, as I said, this is a spoiler for something that happens a little later on in the film. And it turns out that actually the son decided to go to the retreat anyway. and he got a taxi there, and his father had to pay a pretty hefty taxi fee, which suggests that the son hasn't got money of his own, which suggests he's actually younger. And I don't know if his age was ever mentioned, but I don't think they know what age they want him to be. It didn't work. But either way, he turns up, and there are two things I love about this. The first is that the father says to him, "Thank goodness they had an extra bed in the room." I love that so much, because in virtually any other film of this nature, an extra guest would have turned up during busy season, Christmas, and there would have just coincidentally have been a spare room or a spare bed somewhere. I like the fact that the father made it quite clear that actually, in reality, he didn't have a reservation. It probably would have been fully booked. He can't just turn up, but thank goodness they had an extra bed. So I like that, a little bit of self-awareness. And the other thing I loved is that somebody points out to the son that he just abandoned his grandmother to be alone at Christmas because he wanted to go to this retreat to be with his parents. And it's just very juvenile and very immature. But I also like the fact that the film pointed that out, that he'd done a really ridiculous thing. It would have made more sense if he'd had Christmas on his own. And then maybe, yes, there was a reason for him going to the retreat because he didn't want to be alone at Christmas. Fair enough. But he wasn't alone. So the son, while I like the fact that it allowed us to explore the relationship between the son and his father and his stepmother, those moments were very well written. The son as a character really wasn't very well written. So the son, I like that he was in it, but I don't like what they did with the character. And despite the fact that Dr. Fiona Gerard is kind of the driving force behind the narrative, I wish she wasn't in it. Nothing against the performance. I think it was a strong performance. Everybody gave a great performance, but there is significant room for improvement in certain areas. But that aside, I still liked it. I thought Christmas Couples Retreat was still an enjoyable film, and if it sounds like it might appeal to you, then I'm happy to recommend it.